Welcome to Romancing the Stars on the Sunshine Coast 2020 online version. We did have a slight hiccup when we recorded our event on the night, so I am just going to re-record the very beginning of my presentation. Thank you. First, I would like to acknowledge the traditional country of the Gubbi Gubbi and the Jinnaburra peoples of the coastal plains and hinterlands of the Sunshine Coast and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. I pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. And tonight, as we're all over Australia, I would like you to now pop into the chat line and just write down which country you are from. My name is Kelly Dunham. I am the Voices on the Coast coordinator, and I'd like to welcome everybody to this first online Romancing the Stars event with an amazing collection of creators of children's literature from the Sunshine Coast and beyond. For those of us who have normally come to Voices on the Coast, we would be sitting at Emmanuel Lutheran College in our library with about 70 people. And our event would be hosted by Booklinks Queensland Incorporated, the Centre for Children's Literature, and Voices on the Coast together. We are an annual youth literature festival. And we celebrated 25 years of festivals in February this year. Tonight we have over 135 people booked, 7 from overseas, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam and Hong Kong, which is amazing. 39 people from Victoria, 8 from New South Wales and 1 from the ACT. So it's a little bit bigger than our normal event. Tonight you will find a different structure, but still heaps of fun. Hopefully you have your cheese and biscuits ready to go and a glass of something cold as well. I'd now like to just call on Jenny Stubbs, who is the amazing mind, what more can I say? The amazing mind behind Booklinks Queensland, and she is one of the masterminds behind this event here. Jenny is going to share our screen with the first 4 authors, and then I'm going to start introducing those people after that. Great. Okay, so we actually have our first 4 authors for the evening. This is how it's going to, oh no, look. Our first 4 authors for the evening are going to be, I'll just read my little intro out as we go. Our first 4 is Kerr, and Kay is from the Sunshine Coast. She's a debut author with her first book, Please Don't Hug Me, published earlier this year. Kay is a former journalist and community newspaper editor and now works as a freelance writer. Whilst writing the first draft of Please Don't Hug Me, Kay received her own autism spectrum diagnosis. This contemporary YA novel was published with Text Publishing in April 2020. Our second author is Lisa Fuller. She's also a debut author, and Lisa's actually coming to us from Canberra, something we wouldn't normally get on the Sunshine Coast at this event. Lisa's book Ghost Bird was published by UQP and is making waves on all the literary awards lists. It's recently been awarded the winner of the Readings 2020 YA Book Prize, plus shortlisted for the 2020 CBCA Book of the Year Older Reader category, the 2020 Queensland Literary Awards and a bunch of other awards as well. Lisa was originally from Queensland, but is now working as an academic at the University of Canberra, plus a freelance editor and publishing consultant, a busy lady. Will Kostakis is joining us from Sydney as well, and Will is a regular visitor to Voices on the Coast. He is a firm favourite with loads of great feedback from his young audiences. Will is a writer of all things, from celebrity news stories that score cease and desist letters to tweets for professional wrestlers. He's also managed to write 5 novels, and tonight we'll be talking about Rebel Gods, published by Hackett. Richard Yaxley is from Brisbane and has written 8 novels for adult and young adult audiences. His latest book, A New Kind of Everything, was published by Scholastic in February 2020. Richard's books have won a swag of literary awards, including the Queensland Premier's Literary Award. In 2011, Richard was awarded a medal in the Order of Australia OAM for services to education, literature and performing arts. So it's going to be a stunning first 4 authors. I'd like those 4 authors, if you could just turn on your videos and microphones, and we'll start with the lovely Kerr. Now, fingers crossed. All that
Hello,
worked.
can you hear me?
I can see you, Kay. How lovely to see you.
Great. I've been volunteering for the last couple of years at Voices on the Coast,
You
so it's
have,
really special
absolutely.
to be back talking about my book. So I'll jump in.
Yes, and I'm going to start my 5 minutes now. You'll get the timer in 5 minutes and I'll cut you off, Kay. Right.
Great. So this is Please Don't Hug Me. It's my debut YA Own Voices novel. It's 14 plus, the readership. So it's about an autistic girl called Erin, and she is in the last couple of months of high school and navigating all of the change that comes with that. So at the start of the book, she loses her part-time job, which she really needs to be able to save enough money to go to schoolies. So she's quickly trying to find another job, and she's also trying to get her license, and she's doing exams, and she's got formal and graduation, and it's all leading up to schoolies at the end of the year. So for Erin, it's a lot of change in a small space of time, and she's trying to navigate that at the same time as her female friendships and her family dynamics. And she's processing all of that through writing letters to her older brother, Rudy, who's been missing for a year. So as Kelly said, I got my autism diagnosis when I was writing the first draft of this book. And I really thought I was writing a book about a socially awkward, anxious girl with some interesting sensory issues. And once I had my own diagnosis, I realized that was what was happening with Erin on the page. And I went back and I rewrote the story with that in mind. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of the representation of autism that we see can be quite damaging and can be quite dehumanizing to autistic people, whether it's robotic characters who don't seem to show any feelings, or news stories that you read that show a lot of sympathy to the parents of autistic kids, because it must be really hard to have an autistic child. So what I think that Please Don't Hug Me does is it puts the reader in the shoes and in the mind of Erin, especially with the letter writing format. So she is getting to the end of each day and she is processing everything that she feels and everything that she's been through in that day through her letters. So the reader gets a chance to really build empathy and understanding of what it's like to be autistic, I think. One of the biggest issues that readers have been coming to me with is bullying. That's something that's come up over and over again, either with young autistic people or older autistic people who are looking back at their high school experience. So I think the more that we can humanize and build empathy for autistic people, the more that we can address bullying, which I think is such a big issue. And the other thing that I wanted to say too is it's not just an autistic book or an autism book, because sometimes I think that diverse books get lumped into this sort of other category, where it's a book that looks at, what it's like to finish high school and learn to accept yourself and to have your friendships be changing and that kind of thing. So I think it does cover a broad range of topics. And Text Publishing have put together really good teaching notes, pages and pages of notes, to work through with a class, whether it's a book club or an English class. And I think some of those questions double really well as book club questions as well. So yeah, that's everything from me.
Oops, sorry, Kay. You've still got 1 minute and 42 seconds to go.
Okay, great. I was going to run through some of the top 5 misconceptions around autism that I hope that the book can change perceptions on. So the first one being that autistic people are either little boys who love trains or they're a Sheldon Cooper type. So I think having a female protagonist really shows how that can look. Second one being that autistic people don't show empathy or emotional connection. I think the book really shows the internal workings of Erin's mind and her relationships. The third being that autistic people, that the spectrum is this line from less autistic to more autistic. And that's not at all how the spectrum works. So I think people get a good look at that with the book. The fourth being autistic people don't want friendship or relationships. And I think that this shows Erin through her friendships, and also she's in a relationship that's not necessarily the best relationship, but it does show that autistic people have a broad spectrum of life experiences as well. And the final misconception that I hope that this book can address is that autism is a tragedy, because it really isn't. And I think that the sooner that young autistic people can realize that they have positive experiences in their identity and a community that's there behind them, that the better their outcomes can be.
Fantastic, thank you. And you've done it with 16 seconds to go, so it's okay.
Oh,
Thanks,
very
Kate.
timely.
Well
Thank you
done.
so much.
Great. Okay, well, thanks. Kay's popped her video off, and I'm just going to stop my... Sorry. The next author that we've got, and we will take questions at the end, is Lisa Fuller. So Lisa, are you there? Richard, I'm going to ask you to turn off your video just for the minute, and if Lisa could turn...
Can you see me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
So just jump in?
Yep, jump in. Away you go. I've turned the 5 minutes on.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. As Kelly said, hi guys. Don't know how I'm going to follow Kay because that was awesome. But I'm in Canberra, have been since 2006, but I'm originally from a really small town in southeast Queensland called Eidsvold. If you've heard of it, I'm always surprised. It's like 500 people. But this is my debut novel, Ghostbird, and it's actually set in my hometown within my community, and it's all about our culture and our spiritual beliefs. I am a Willy woman, also descended from Waka Waka and Gurung peoples, and it was really important to me. I think as Kay was saying, you know, that representation and that authentic representation where people aren't just these stereotypes or these caricatures of what gets portrayed in media, and then it just continues to you know, be this self-perpetuating mythology or representation that's just not reality. So Ghostbird actually is about twin sisters, Eleni and Stacey, and they're in their last year of high school. They're black girls, and Stacey is like your stereotypical good girl. She respects her family, she wants to get out, she values her education, but she's also struggling around her beliefs around Aboriginality, our spiritual beliefs in our culture. Whereas Lainey is very much entrenched in their beliefs, but she's also very anti education, and she's just being a rebel and going out and sneaking out with her boyfriend. And one night she sneaks out and she doesn't come home. And Stacey essentially gets put to one side while the family's trying to find her. And she will have to face down quite a lot of things like cultural taboos, racism, all these other challenges, including some inter-family dynamics to find out what happened to her sister. I'm really bad at those intros, so I hope it doesn't sound super boring. I've been told it's quite scary. I get really excited when adults tell me that they had to sleep with the lights on. So I've been told to tell people don't read it while it's night out. Yeah, I think the representation thing was the biggest reason for doing this, because growing up as a kid in Eidsvold, there was nothing. You know, our town library was a bookshelf, and it was all rural romance, which I love romance, but there was nobody in there that looked like us or acted like us. And if there was, it was incredibly racist and very awful to read and hurtful and damaging to me as a teenager. So I ended up just falling in love with speculative fiction because they were talking about, you know, races and othering and all those issues that I was dealing with at that age. So when I wrote Ghostbird, I was actually thinking about my nieces, my nephews, my cousins, and just wanting to do my best to give them something that they could pick up and be proud of and see themselves in a really authentic way. So there's a lot of, you know, mature content in there, there's swearing, there's things like that going on, but I've been really encouraged and surprised by just how many schools have picked it up. And I'm even talking next week to a bunch of year 8s who are reading it in class, which shocked me because I never thought in a million years that people would be as open as they are to it. And it's just blown my mind, and I've loved every second of it. Yeah, I guess that's really it for me. Where am I at, Kelly?
Sorry, it takes me forever to get the unmute off. Sorry.
Right.
You've got 58 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say. Oh, I did actually spend 6 weeks back home with my aunties working on this. 6 of my aunties. So I got permissions and approvals and It was a really long, complicated process. And I think my experience as a publisher and editor, I was always very, very careful about what I represent on the page in terms of our spiritual beliefs, because I don't want things to be misappropriated, and I don't want to open my community up to attack. Or so there was always that in my mind. So it's been interesting, but it's also been really, really cool seeing how people respond so positively. And yeah, I don't know what else to say. I've also been really shocked. There's our words in there. We use Aboriginal English. It's all the way through it. The one word that people always have goes at me about is port. Nobody can figure out what port means. And I had no idea that that's a Queenslander thing.
Oh, sorry, my bells are ringing.
That's all right.
It is. It's absolutely a Queenslander thing. And for those who don't know what a port is, would you like to tell everybody what a port is, Lisa?
Oh, I always forget what it's short for. It's like portmanteau or something.
Oh, something like that.
It's essentially our school ports, our backpacks.
Yes.
That's what a port is.
It's a bag. It's a school bag.
It's a bag.
Yeah, absolutely. You take your port to school.
Yeah.
Not quite sure, but anyway. I'm not sure if it's still used as much as what it was.
Well, with my family it is, so I don't know.
Oh, there you go. Fine. Okay. So, great. Sorry, my bells were going to go off again. Sorry, Lisa. Great. I've got a few questions that we can ask in just a little while. Okay, so the next person, thank you so much, Lisa. That was fantastic. Someone has said my kids say school bag, but they put it on the port rack. That's absolutely right. We do put it on a port rack. And somebody else said that they didn't know that as a Sydney-sider. So there you go. Okay, so Will, you've got your video on and your sound all ready to go. So lovely. Will, away you go.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Will Kostakis. I am a Sydney-based author, probably best known for my novels, The First Third and The Sidekicks. Today, I'm talking about a book that doesn't exist for another 5 days, and it is called Rebel Gods, and it is the conclusion to the duology that I started at the end of last year with Monuments. So basically, about 10 years into my career, I was looking for a bit of a change. I was very much used to reflecting on myself and my experiences and my identity in my works. But I was often finding that by centering my identity in my work, whether it be as a Greek boy or as a young gay man, I was constantly looking for ways to assess that identity in, how to put it, when you center identity in the middle of a story, that's searching for conflict, often that conflict comes from the identity itself. And so I was writing stories where people like me were sitting in the corner and contemplating where they belonged. And I just felt after a few books like that, I wanted to see somebody like me, the gay Greek kid, go out and do something else, go on an adventure, save the world. And as a young reader, I was obsessed with fantasy fiction. Terry Pratchett is one of my favorite authors, and I love fantasy video games. And I was a huge daydreamer as a kid. I would press my head against, the glass of a Sydney train. And as the city scrolled past, I would imagine these sprawling fantasy epics playing out across its rooftops. And, last year I thought I would write a story where somebody like me got to be the hero in one of those stories. And we ended up with Monuments, which is about 3 kids, Connor, Sally, and Lockie, who basically skip school for the day to find the ancient gods that are buried around Sydney. And it was light and it was fun. And I really wanted to write a story that all lovers of young adults could read, whether it was, the adults who read YA or those kids in year 5, year 6 who read up could read and read safely. So I stripped out all the really rude words that I love to write. And I just had lots of fun with it. I loved taking Sydney and, looking at it from that fantastical perspective. And the whole thing was, I just wanted to write an escape having written 2 pretty heavy books beforehand. Little did I know how much I would need that escape this year in the hellscape that is 2020. So Rebel Gods picks up immediately after Monuments, and it sees our 3 heroes sort of coming to terms with the consequences of their adventure in the first book, and also grappling with their changing lives now that they have become empowered. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to tell another fantasy story, but use that fantasy story to tell a story inspired by my own experiences about my changing family dynamics at home. And, you know, as, you know, a young Greek boy, you know, I have quite strong ties to my mum, and our relationship has evolved a lot, especially in the past 5-6 years, you know, moving out of home, finding independence, and sort of renegotiating the bounds of our relationship. And so I wanted to write a fantasy novel that dealt with what it's like when you're 16, 17, 18, and you're starting to see your parents as fully fleshed human beings who, you know, don't just pay the bills and feed you, but that make mistakes and make their own decisions independent of you. And I wanted to do all of that while giving my 3 protagonists sort of the impossible tasks of having to murder 3 gods, basically. So it's sort of a spin on Hamlet, where they're procrastinating, but instead of killing an uncle, it is killing 2 gods. They don't quite know whether they are evil or not. And so, yeah, it's a really light, really fun book. And it's really exciting to, you know, I've been so overwhelmed by the support of teen readers who have really, really enjoyed Monument. So getting to finish it off has been really great.
And would you believe you have 1 second to go, Will? Well done. Excellent work.
Excellent.
Thank you. Oh gosh, hold on, I need to cancel it. Oh, stop. Sorry, it's ringing everywhere. Thank you, Will. And Richard, our lucky last author for the first section. Thank you. And I'm just going to start my 5 minutes, and away we go.
Great, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see you all here, and thanks very much for joining in. I want to talk to you about my 5th YA novel. There it is, A New Kind of Everything. It was published by Scholastic in March of this year. It's a novel aimed at young people from 14 years and older. I think, you know, I like to write things that have a broader appeal as possible, obviously, but I think this one probably have a strong appeal to young males because of the nature of the story and motifs in the story, such as cars and driving and the dangers inherent in young male friendships and the dangers of certain associations, such as hard right political groups and things like that. It's a story that begins in grief, and there's been the reviews of the story have talked about that. This is an exploration of grief and the way it breaks life apart, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. But it does end in a tempered kind of hope, and I guess my writing is all about that. When I look at my own work, well, I try to look at it dispassionately, which is a pretty hard thing to do when you're so involved in it. When I do, I think that I tend to focus on that great time-honoured literary theme of beginning in disunity, taking characters on a journey which is going to be filled with various pitfalls, and ultimately ending in some kind of negotiated reunion so that we can move forward and better handle whatever lies ahead. The story itself is about the Gallagher family. It begins 6 months after the death of the father, Barney. He died in a single vehicle road accident. Even though he's not technically present throughout the story, he's very much a key character and presented in a range of flashbacks and memories. And the family has really been built around him and his varying issues, particularly his own childhood. He's married to Alison. She's only just coping with the loss of her husband. She's someone who's probably slipping through the cracks a little bit and finding herself with 2 teenage boys to look after. It's a difficult situation for her. The 2 boys are Carl, the oldest son. He's 17 years old, and Carl's the kind of guy who whilst he laments the loss of his father and probably deeply within himself knows that he is a bit of a carbon copy of his dad, he sees this as an opportunity to sort of take Dad's place and become the man that Dad never was. So he's full of chutzpah and bravado and hubris, and really tries to sort of put himself out there. Whereas his younger brother, Dinny, who is the narrator of the novel, is 14 years old, is a much softer, disaffected, lonely sort of guy who just doesn't understand the enormous loss that's occurred in his life and is really struggling to negotiate that in any kind of meaningful way. So he's a very much a lost boy. So the story then traces their respective intertwining journeys as they move away from the loss of their father and try and find some kind of reconciliation with the new structure of their family. Alison, the mother, retreats into a sort of fantasy world offered by musical theatre. So for her, the imaginative world of theatre is a better place than the real world. Carl gets himself associated with a fundamentalist nationalist group, Australian group, and that causes all sorts of difficulties, obviously. And Dinny finds himself a new friend, but that friend is a disruptive and influence in society, someone whose chief aim is to disrupt the main tenets of society. So ultimately these worlds kind of come together and clash. And I think the hope of the reader, and certainly the hope that's been expressed to me by readers on feedback, is that Dinny will have the intelligence and the moral sense to survive, and that the family can in some way move forward. So you probably picked up from what I've been saying that there's some fairly strong issues in the book, and yes, there are. It's certainly gritty in places. There's racism, suggestive domestic violence, drug use, hypermasculinity, those kinds of things. But that doesn't, it's not a completely bleak read, far from it. I think it's more a realistic portrayal of the way a family operates. For me, and as I said before, a lot of the talk's been about this sort of portrayal of the effects of grief. But when I started writing this, my main aim was to explore a loving brotherly relationship. Was that my bell, was it?
That is yes, that is, oh gosh, now I can't stop it. Yes, Richard.
That's a bit like me, Kelly. I can't.
No, that's fine. I can't stop. But if you wanted to just finish that train of thought, I'm sure that's
I was just wanted to say that the story really, to me, it's about brotherly love, particularly that kind of love when you've got two guys that 1 minute are beating each other up and the next minute hugging each other. So I think that's the basis of the story. Thanks.
Fantastic. And there we are, we're on 7:21. That's not bad at all. Can I ask all 4 authors who have just spoken, if you could pop on your videos so that we can see you. And we do have some questions in the chat. I've been madly copying and pasting, so I'm hoping I've got everybody's questions here. But the first question, actually, I'm just going to pop that so I can see you all. The first question was to Kay, and it was Nan, and she says, "Great, Kay. Do you hate being hugged? My 30-year-old son hates it, and he's on the spectrum."
I don't necessarily hate being hugged. I hate the social expectation that comes around hugging. That's where this sort of title and part of the story came from, is because, as with a lot of social interactions, I guess neurotypical people might have an idea of how that's going to play out, and for every neurotypical person that could be a little bit different. And if you're autistic or otherwise neurodivergent, I think it can be really tricky to try and guess how that's going to play out and to figure it out when you're not necessarily able to read body language or to understand what's going to be expected of you. So not necessarily, but I wouldn't be running to hug anybody at the moment.
Right. No, I don't think anybody's running to hug anybody at the minute anyway, so just sort of good, I suppose. I also have another question for you from Dimity. Other conditions are often associated with or experienced by autistic people. For example, OCD. Has this been your experience or that of your main characters? And how important do you think this is for others to recognise and understand?
Yeah, so I guess not specifically OCD isn't something that I have personally experienced or written about as of yet, but I know that there are often other things that coexist with autism, whether it is, you know, anxiety related or other neurodivergence like ADHD or dyslexia, that kind of thing. Definitely included in the book. And as well, something that I touch on with my protagonist is an eating disorder, because autistic people are, I think, 4 times more likely to have an eating disorder than neurotypical people, which I don't think people necessarily know. So yeah, that's something that's in the book as well.
Great, fantastic. My question now is for Lisa. And Therese says, it's so good that students are reading Ghostbird for school. It's a fabulous book that is so necessary to read. So it was more a comment, so that was fantastic. And another person, Marg, said teacher's notes, asking the question, is there teacher's notes for this book?
Yep, there sure is. It's on the UQP website.
Fantastic. That's great. UQP are marvellous. Gina says, go Lisa, what a terrific debut. More to follow, I hope. I would love to catch up with you in Canberra to talk about First Nations in blended fiction. So that's Gina Newton. I'm sure that you're going to have a bit of a conversation there. It sounds good. And Phil asked both Kay and Lisa, your books seem very personal. Was it hard to share personal feelings or experiences in a book?
I don't know if you want to answer first, Lisa, or?
Okay.
Yeah, I definitely wrote this book thinking that I would never show it to another person in the world as I was writing it. And I think because that was such a long process from writing to publishing, I started writing it in 2014 and it's published in 2020. So I definitely had the time to come to terms with sharing this book and what my protagonist goes through and my own story as well. And I think for me, what it's always come back to is that the payoff for young autistic people to have somebody that's in front of them talking about autism in a positive way, and that representation is always going to outweigh the personal, maybe emotional or sort of energy toll that it can sometimes take to speak about really personal topics.
See, well, I was in complete denial. I thought I'd been really original. But then, yeah, my mum and my sisters read it and they all had a really good laugh at me and were like, you realize you've essentially written us all in there, except for my baby sister. She's actually quite insulted. So I actually managed to sidestep all of that because those 3 main characters of the mum and the twin girls, yeah, they're based on my mum and my elder sister and I, but they're not 100% us. Whereas the grandfather in the story, we lost my grandfather before I started writing this, and he was my father figure. And I asked permission from his children to include him in there, and that is 100% him. And the best compliment I've had is from my family telling me that I nailed him. And it was a really important part of my grieving process and of honouring him, and the book's actually dedicated to him. So it was my way of paying tribute to an amazing man.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you so much for sharing from both Kay and from Lisa. Will, it's your turn. I've got a couple of questions for you. I've got a comment first up from Sophia saying Terry Pratchett is amazing. And then Nan says, we'll certainly look out for Will's new book. Love his style, as do we all, Nan, absolutely. And Phil says, I love monuments and was so impressed with how the time traveling fit and made complete sense in the book. Time traveling often goes really wrong, even for the best authors. Were you worried about adding that into your book?
Oh, okay.
And the cat.
Just some context. I cooked some chicken and took it out of the oven while Richard was speaking, and now the cats are harassing me.
Of course, we're all friends here, Will. It's okay.
But look, the way that I edit books is usually I write them and then I completely pull them apart and put them back together again. And usually my books, through the editing process, they look completely different each time I write them. But I always knew that time travel would be a factor in this book. So it was really, really difficult to not stuff it up, because I'm one of those people who, whenever I'm watching a time travel narrative or reading it, I'm thinking, you've stuffed this up, you've stuffed this up, you've stuffed this up. So I had that sort of critical eye on myself at all times. I had to sort of map it out and keep consulting that map. But every time I made an edit when I was writing, it would throw everything off. And so I just had to make sure I just wrote it to the point where I was happy with the structure of the story. Then I went through and made sure that all the time travel stuff, you know, and all the little hints that I give throughout that there is time travel at play, had to make sure that that was really, really clear throughout. But it was really stressful, and it's why I made sure I destroyed the time travel mechanic at the end of Monuments so that I didn't have to worry about that ever again.
Fantastic. Thank you, Will. And Phil comments saying, ha ha ha, same. So he must be an author as well. Richard, it's your turn. I've got Marg says, flashbacks. How do you successfully weave them into your plot? Is there a specific technique?
I think the technique is not to be too plot bound. I actually write a lot of pieces and then put them together to create the whole. So the flashbacks are normally pieces of writing that I've done perhaps in preparation for the novel. So not everything I write goes into the novel. I'll sometimes write little like an exercise to explore the character, and then those kinds of things can eventually find their way in as, you know, a differential within the overall structure.
Fantastic. I have another comment here, and unfortunately I forgot to copy and paste who said it, but it says, as someone with 4 brothers, I have witnessed that kind of love. Look forward to reading the book, Richard. So, and another question here, and I think it's from Dimity. It's, Richard, you've written across a number of different age groups. How comfortable or uncomfortable was writing this latest novel for this age group? Is there an audience you prefer to write for?
Not really preferred audience, but I found this book quite a difficult one to write because of, well, I have 2 sons and I'm a brother and a father and all those sorts of things. And I guess things that I was exploring, I mean, the comment that was made before about how personal are the books, to me, just about every book I think is personal in some way. And I think we've all said that in what we've covered here tonight. So the difficulty comes more in the ability to suspend your own personal baggage or whatever. I don't know if that's not the right word, but the things that come to you as a person in order to construct the story effectively. So yeah, I had some difficulties here. I always have difficulties doing nasty things to characters because, like all authors, I love them to bits.
Excellent. Don't we all? And we love your characters as well, Richard, so that's fantastic.
Thanks.
Well, thank you. And Dimity's given you the thumbs up and a clap on that one, Richard, so that's all good. I'm pretty sure that was Dimity.
Dimity owes me a glass of wine.
She does. Thank you to Lisa, to Will, to Richard, and to Kay. Now I'm just, Jenny Stubbs is now appearing on our book links page there as well, because we are going to do a lucky draw. And this one is, we've got a copy of Please Don't Hug Me by Kerr, which has been donated by Kay, published by Text. We've got Rebel Gods by Will Kostakis, published by Hackett and donated by Voices on the Coast. So those 2 books, Jenny's going to do a lucky door, it's not a lucky door prize, but almost a lucky door prize. And those 2 books will be sent out to the winner. Away you go, Jenny.
Okay, and the winner's, oh no, that's ridiculous. I pulled out my own name, can you believe it?
Yes, I can. How many of your names are in there, Jenny?
Goodness me. The first winner is Alison Patterson of Dune Springs. And so that would be the Will Kostakis book.
Yep.
And you could pass it on to her because she's up there close to you.
I will, absolutely.
Yes. And the second winner is Eleni Zakires from Hunters Hill. Eleni, are you online? We need to make sure you're online. Put something in the chat room if you are, because there's 100 people in the chat room. Hey, Eleni said yes.
Bingo.
Okay, so she's going to get Kay Kerr's book. Kay, I'll send you the, you or Kelly or whoever's going to post it, I'll send you her address. Okay.
Great. Fabulous. So we've had our first 4 authors. And someone's just saying, thank you for introducing me to some new authors. As a mother of a 13 and a 14-year-old, there's some great Christmas gifts here. And you're absolutely right, Justine, some fabulous, fabulous authors there. It hasn't stopped yet. We're on to our next 4. So if I can ask our first 4 authors to turn their videos off and our next 4 to pop on. And Jenny's going to share her screen, I hope. And we'll have just a little look at who is our next 4 authors. Fantastic. Right, so we've got our next 4 authors are all our picture book and illustrator authors. And first up we have Carolyn Mcgill. She's a Sunshine Coast based picture book author and illustrator, and also another firm favourite of Voices on the Coast with her beautiful, beautiful illustrations in all of her books. Carolyn's previous works have been awarded a range of literary awards, and her most recent book, Not, has been shortlisted for the 2020 CBCA Book of the Year Award Picture Book category. Original illustrations by Carolyn Mcgill are permanently represented at the Chris Beatles Gallery in St James, London. Tonight, Carolyn will be talking about Not, published by Walker Books. Our second author in this group is Debbie Smith, also from the Sunshine Coast, and she is a children's book author and book reviewer who released her debut picture book, If You Meet an Elephant, in late 2019. It was illustrated by another local Sunshine Coast author and illustrator, Emma Middleton. Debbie's lifelong career as an early childhood and primary extension specialist teacher has allowed her to share her passion for children's literature and creative writing. Debbie will be speaking about If You Meet an Elephant, published by Little Steps Publishing. Our third author is Wender Surety, and Wender is from Brisbane. Her passion is to write stories that help children be imaginative, courageous and curious. Her picture book, Eva's Imagination, was shortlisted for the Speech Pathology Australia Book of the Year 2019 and was read on ABC's Play School. That's a bonus. In 2021, she has 3 picture books coming out with Storyhouse Publishing UK and 1 with EK Books, along with a middle grade manuscript, Strong-Willed, that was shortlisted in the Queensland Writers' Centre 2020 Adaptable Competition. Eva's Imagination is published by New Frontier Publishing. And last but certainly not least, we have Dave Hackett, who's actually joining us from France today. So he is in the south of France with beautiful blue sky, I might add. He's been living there since earlier this year with his lovely wife. Dave is amazing at wrangling many young audiences with his drawing abilities, and he can draw a 9-headed granny monster riding a unicycle in pursuit of a flying disco pig faster than anybody. Dave is the author of 17 picture books, cartooning books, and novels for all ages, and is currently working on his first graphic novel. Tonight, Dave will be talking about Time for Adventure Daddy, published by UQP. So right now, we'll ask those 4 authors to pop on their screens, their videos. And where are we? And if everyone's on their speaker view, we'll start with Caroline. Oops, sorry, Caroline, I've got to turn on my 5 minutes. Away we go.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. Hi Kelly. My book Nop, which was out last year, I love to tell story behind stories, and it's been interesting listening to the other authors because I can see how much depth people bring to their work. And picture books, although they are a very brief art form, actually have quite a lot of depth to them too. And I'd like to talk a little bit about what started Nop off. The way Nop started, I don't know if you can see. This is the bear that our daughter sewed for my husband as a bit of a joke. She was going through a sort of a teenage sarcastic phase, and she made this as a gift. Now, this is actually roadkill. You can tell because see how flat he is? That's actually how Nop began. I couldn't stand the sight of this bear of roadkill. I wanted to fix this bear because he was so decrepit, and my daughter thought it was such a joke. So I resisted. I didn't fix the bear. I did something instead. I channeled all my fixing energy into writing a story around a bear that was falling apart and a bit unloved. Anyway, I didn't get very far with it. I started to draw some images, and I had a few words, and then something occurred to me, and this is one of those processes that take a story right down a different road. I remembered my mother showing me a picture of myself as a toddler, and I was wearing this little like pink dress, and she pointed at the photo and she said, "I made you wear that dress." She did that in an emphatic German voice. And I remember how angry she sounded, and I wondered about it, and I realized what it was that little pink dress was armor against what people might make of us as a family, as newcomers to Australia. She was very anxious, and that memory was what started Nop off. Nop was born at that moment because I was able to somehow put together the idea of this tatty, unloved bear who didn't have the right stuff, and this memory of my mother and her anxiety around how we appeared. It was obviously something that mattered to me. So I began to write this story about Nop. He was in a dumporium. He was sitting on a pile of junk, and all the other toys had tizzied themselves up and had managed to find a home, and Nop had not managed that. And he had to basically fend for himself and think of something because he wasn't going to get picked. So he got himself a little bow tie, and he built himself an escape machine, and he got out of there. And as he flew through the air, he took a leap of faith that he would be fine no matter how he appeared. And he fell into the arms of an orangutan, which was a random way to end the story, but actually it was something that I just couldn't get. I couldn't write it out of the story. I loved the way the story ended just like that. So it was the theme in the end was about having value in yourself, and that was something that retrospectively I think really brought into this story and made the story what it is for me. It's about having worth in yourself and setting worth in yourself. Now, writing Nop was a curious thing in that it was the second story I'd written after Hazel and Rose, and I wasn't all that confident in my writing. And I had this strange ending with the orangutan, which wasn't a traditional sort of story arc as I understand it. And so I had a different ending and a more, how should I say, a more predictable ending and an easier one to understand. And I put it to Walker, and they looked at it, and they looked at the orangutan ending, and they took it to their conference, and they actually had a vote with all the people there, the marketing people and whatnot. They put it up, the two different endings, and to my astonishment, everyone voted for the orangutan, and I felt that was like the world had turned upside down, because for once, my random writing style actually seemed to have hit the mark. So,
Carolyn, I'm going to stop you there. You're actually about 15 seconds past, but I didn't want to interrupt that beautiful
thank you.
story.
I thought I was going to go too short. Oh,
no, you're done. You are done.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. But thank you. A lovely, lovely story. I'm just madly copying and pasting comments as we speak at the moment.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, all good. I think we
flow.
can be a little bit lenient. That's fine. Thanks, Caroline. And I'm going to ask, oh goodness, I've lost my list. I'll just grab it off the floor. Debbie now, if she could pop on and start to talk. Thanks, Debbie.
Can you see me?
I can see you, Debbie. It's all good, and I can hear you, which is fabulous.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for inviting me for this. I'm in awe of all the wonderful authors and illustrators here tonight. And thank you for everyone coming along and joining us tonight. I just want to talk to you about If You Meet an Elephant, which is my debut picture book, and something I never really thought I'd do, because I wasn't really interested in publishing until I got grandchildren. So you've got to start somewhere, I guess. And I've written lots of stories, but this particular story came from sharing with my writing extension students. One year we had, at the end of the year, I always wrote a short story or a poem for them. And we had lots of fun with elephants. It was quite a dark little poem, actually. It was stomping underground, but it planted a seed in me that grew, or it was a thorn. I needed to do something with it. So I got busy I thought, oh, I'll write a picture book. And I thought that would be easy, same as watercolors, but it's not. It's like a bit of a challenge. But I had lots of fun, and to write this, I was going to go to do my master's, but decided to just do the University of Life and just give this journey a fair go. So it was, I worked with Emma Middleton, the beautiful and talented Emma Middleton. She does beautiful illustrations of watercolor, and I don't know how to, there we go. And she just, we talked on a trip to a Squibby meeting down in Brisbane, 2 hours on a train, talking about the character. There's only one character originally in the writing, but she developed the mouse character. He was going to be a duck, but then we decided that we'd like to have a mouse instead. And the characters don't have names in the story, so mouse is mouse, but elephant has always been Olive. In this, it's a rhyming story that's suitable for children ages 4 to 8, and it's a theme of diversity of friendships, focusing on patience, tolerance, kindness, and acceptance. I went to a Right Links meeting once with Kerry Brown. She's a children's author for picture books, and she spoke about threads in stories. And with this book, with elephants, what really came out was the bunting. I really wanted to show the bunting, and I said to Emma, can you please put more bunting in? So we've got bunting in the design of the book and all throughout it. But one of the most important things is the elephant is doing nothing wrong. He's just this big, beautiful baby elephant who's very, very cute, but he finds a mouse, and the mouse tags along, and all of the things that the elephant does in life, like taking baths and having sneezes, or dripping with his big trunk, is a bit of a problem for the mouse. But it just shows oh gosh, he's trying to work through all the problems that are presented. And so one of my favorite pages is how big. So in this, you can show, talk to students or your child about the differences in sizes, comparisons. And I just love the way the font was done, and this big foot with the little mouse, and it just shows the drama that's happening for the mouse. And as I move on through this adventure, this is one of my favorite pages too, with big booty bottoms and flip flappy ears. But as I move through the story, there's lots of space in the story for kids you can talk to children about different aspects of friendship, or about the elephants, the interesting facts about elephants. And we've got the elephant here, and the thread that Kerry Brown was talking about. She had a book called Poppy Wash, and the hill was the thread in the story, and the bunting was used. I love the way it's all loose and it just flows across from one character to the other. Their party hats are off and they are just thinking about each other and what it means. So we've all had friends that are loud or messy or noisy, or people that have different conditions like autism or Asperger's or Tourette's, and they do things and they're just being themselves, but they need friends as much as everybody. And so this is what a story is trying to achieve. And here's the aha moment, but wait, wouldn't it be, can you imagine how cool it could be if...
Debbie, I'm going to have to stop you there. You're a few seconds over about.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you so much, Debbie, and a beautiful, beautiful book. So that's wonderful to see those illustrations out there as well.
Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks, Debbie. And next we have Wender on here. So Wender, it's your turn. If you could pop on your screen and start your talk.
My screen on?
Yes, it is, Yahoo, and I can see you and hear you. Fabulous.
Brilliant. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to, well, not see you, but I'm imagining you. I'm going to talk about 3 books today. I'm going to squeeze them in quickly. The first one is Eva's Imagination. And Eva's Imagination is published by New Frontier and illustrated by Karen Erasmus. And I was inspired to write this story by my daughter Belinda, who, when she was 5 years old, she's 10 now, she came into this study and she threw herself onto the floor and said, "Mum, I'm bored." And I said, "Well, what about your imagination?" So that started the story off, and I then I went back to my, when I was a child, and what did I used to do with my imagination? Basically, I used to go around the house, because I lived in England and you were inside most of the time. I went round the house and had adventures with mountains, going up the stairs, or in caves under the bed. So that's how Eva's Imagination came about. Now the name Eva, I thought it went really well with the word imagination, but what was really lovely is I found out that Karen Erasmus' daughter is called Eva, so that made it extra special. Chops is named after my dog, Charlie Chops, who sadly passed away, but it's lovely that her name continues. This book is a great tool to explain imagination to children. And this is mainly because of Karen's amazing illustrations, which I'll show you a few. So the sun shone brightly as they made their way through the narrow valley. And just look at this spectacular illustration here. And you can see Eva and Chops walking down the hallway, which is the narrow valley. You can see how Karen has used shadows, showing a cat being a panther and the banisters becoming trees. And then they go to a dense forest. And again, what a wonderful illustration. Here's Eva and Chops. And you can see how she's made the chair legs and the table legs look like tree trunks. And there we have the green tablecloth looking like the canopy of the forest. So that's Eva's Imagination. I'd also like to talk to you about Dig, 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 which was going to be published earlier this year, but because of COVID, it's been delayed. And this is with Story House Publishing, and it's illustrated by Andrea Stigmeyer. And it's about a little boy who tries to dig to the other side of the world. And the themes are determination, cooperation, working together, and community. And we really wanted to reflect the diversity in the community. So we made sure the characters were of all different skin tones and different abilities to show that, it's the community all working together. Because mainly I have a friend who's a prep teacher, and she said to me often when she reads picture books, some of the children don't feel they're reflected in the illustrations. They can't see themselves. So that's another one of the reasons. And I'd love to show you another one of Andrea's illustrations. So here we have the children madly digging the hole, and then big fat raindrops splatter on the ground. And what happens next? Well, you'll have to wait till January. So this is actually again inspired by an event in my childhood. So myself and my neighbourhood friends, we all got together and we wanted to dig a hole from Norwich, England to Australia, because we wanted to know, did people in Australia walk upside down? So we dug and we dug, and 40 years later, I made it. Well, actually, what happened was it became late afternoon and we all got fed up. We probably dug about 1.5 meters, but that's when it ended. And the last book I'd like to tell you about is Pair of Hope. And Pair of Hope is a story really close to my heart. It's going to come out with EK Books in April 2021. It's illustrated by Deb Hudson. She's done a beautiful job. And it's a story about a little girl called Anna who gets cancer, and she goes through chemotherapy and losing her hair. She loses her hair, and as her hair grows back, the story is intertwined with the growth of a pear tree that she plants. So this is to symbolise and encourage hope. Hope's been really important to me in my life, living with multiple sclerosis. So I wanted to write a story, having friends and family members who've gone through cancer, and I wanted to symbolise hope. And I think Deb's illustrations really help show that. And this one makes me a little bit teary, but I'd love to show you. These are all sneak peeks, by the way. So here we have the old pear tree in the bottom of the garden, and there we have Anna rubbing her head, her bald head, as she picks a pear, and you know how a pear has that dent feeling. So yes, that's Pair of Hope. Thank you.
Well done, Wendy. You have got 0 seconds.
Yeah.
So, yeah, perfect timing. And oh gosh, hang on. And it's fabulous to see all of those little sneak peeks as well. We're very lucky to see those as well. Thank you, Wenda. Okay, and lucky last is Dave. So Dave, if you're out there somewhere, if you could pop your...
there we go. Does that work?
Excellent, we can see you.
Look at
and
that.
It is sunshine. It's pitch black over here, but yeah.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
daytime. That's how we do it here.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
We'll let you go, Dave. Off and running.
All right. Well, thanks, Kelly. So big, huge hi to everybody. Thank you so much for jumping in and being a part of this. This is a wonderful experience for not just all of you out there who come to listen to us, but for us as well. So yay, everybody's doing a nice thing. Now I'm a cartoonist, I'm an author, and I just wanted to share, because I'm curious, today I'm rocking the body mullet. So it's nice shirt on top, and then I'm just going to do this. A little bit of board shots on the bottom, because I think that's how we zoom. I'm just curious. I might ask some questions and see who else is doing that. Now I'm here mostly to talk about my latest book with UQP. It's called Time for Adventure Daddy. I have Time for a Bed Daddy. There's Time for a School Daddy, so it's the third in a picture book series. I don't have a copy with me. I do believe there's one floating around in Australia somewhere. I don't have a copy because really quickly I had to pack up my goodies and leave Australia really fast. My wife and I were separated during the first round of the confinement, so she was here in France, and it took us 100 days to finally be allowed to leave the country and be together again. So, and oh hey, this is interesting. The final reason I was rejected a couple of times, but the final reason I was allowed to leave is because the two of us are working on a book together here with a French publisher. So it was compassionate reasons sort of bound up in a book proposal. So that, books have a different kind of power sometimes too. So my wife is a writer as well, but we work in a way that, well, the books that we create, or books that I like to create, really there's a theme for them, and the theme is love, kindness, creativity, and human liberation. So we try and piece all of those things together, or I try and piece those things together in the books that I write. So in all that I do, my aim is to help people feel more free to be themselves as they move through life, and also to respect that freedom in others. And although I don't sort of bash people over the head with that in such as Time for Adventure Daddy, my hope is that if you look through the book, you'll pick up on those themes, which is, it's really nice. There's a lot of stuff in the world, and I think it's really important that, love and kindness and beauty are at the forefront of that. It's a great way to battle all of the other things that are coming in. Now, the books themselves, so Time for Adventure Daddy, these ones here, imagine I've got the actual new book that just came out last week. Time for Adventure, Daddy. So it's about a little girl and her dad, and they're locked up in the house, and she's like, come on, Daddy, it's time for an adventure. And so they wander out, they wander down the path, and then Daddy's there and he's picking up some sticks, and they meet a worm along the way, and he's like, can we keep him? And she says, no, Daddy, he probably has a family. So they leave the worm and they have a little picnic. And so it's about, and especially now, it's really quite timely now, given our, the global state of things. Because it feels, I mean, it's about helping kids or people to expand their scope and their range of freedom and creativity in limited spaces. So they want to have an adventure, but it's never clear whether it's just in the backyard or whether they actually wander down and, find themselves a little park. But those stories about the dad and the daughter, I have, 4 kids, so we have 2 daughters and two sons, and they sort of started with our eldest daughter, who's now 19. And they've continued with our daughter here in France. There's not far from where we live here, there's a little pathway that goes past a little magical forest, and there's a castle at the end. And so we sort of she likes to imagine that a dragon sleeps there in the little space. So those kinds of adventures, like we really think it's important as a family to create that sense of adventure and that sense of magic and imagination in what really is, your everyday, which is really nice. And I just want to give you a quick thing. I imagine there are just some seconds left, but just to say what I'm working on currently, I've started illustrating a series for Jackie French. So this is part of her Fair Dinkum History. So I've just sent another bunch of drawings away for another of those. Oh, there's Kelly's dingle. And so I probably have to stop. No, that's my wind chime.
It's actually you. It's not me. You've got 24 seconds.
I know. We have it. Do I? All right. So as well as doing the Jackie French book, my wife and I are working on a book, which is a nonfiction book for grown-ups about democratizing huge firms. And that's kind of a graphic, a graphic picture booky nonfiction thing for the whole world. And I'm also super excited because I've started work on a nonfiction book about Australian music, which is super exciting. And there's your jingle.
That is my jingle now. Yes. Not your wind chimes, Dave, but very interesting anyway. No. Fantastic. And thank you to all 4 of our authors, Carolyn, Debbie, Wender, and Dave. If you could all just pop on your videos again, because I do have a couple of questions, and I'll do them quite quickly because we're at 8 o'clock now. But Caroline, yes, there you are. If I might just have to ask you to unmute, Carolyn. I'm going to ask you some questions. My personal thing was I love the word fixing energy. That was fantastic. And Marg says, I love the way that ideas are born, even from anxiety. Jenny says, my students love the ending and the surprise of the orangutan. So it's all good here for the orangutan. And Judy says, Jenny said that. Judy says, love hearing about taking up the freedom to write how it comes. And Gina, if the orangutan is an orphan, he might really love having Nop to hug. So you never know. And Carrie says, my students love Nop. So relatable for younger children. So some fantastic questions there. Debbie, it's now, so sorry, Caroline, there was no actual questions, mainly comments on that one. Oops, hang on now, I've got 5 new messages here. To all the authors, how much of a say do you get in the final illustrations of your stories? So maybe I will ask that of you, Caroline.
Right. Well, I tend to write and illustrate books in tandem, so the publisher gets a pretty good idea of how I'm going to illustrate it alongside what the actual material, the actual text will be like. So they've been forewarned. They can see what the pictures are going to be like, and if there's any problems, it gets nutted out in the rough stage. So it's very much a part of the process. So I'd say that I don't have a lot of input from the publisher with the illustrations.
Great. I might come back to that one because there are a few other questions here as well. Debbie, Verity loves the idea of a thorn. That is what it feels like when you need to write and just can't let it go until you finish. And Dimity says, what is the significance of the bunting? Did this arise from the storyline, or was it an instigating factor for the story?
No, it just, as I said, it was with the, from the Rightlings meeting with Kerry Brown, and she was talking about threads, and the bunting to me is always happy, and I wanted it to be a really fun book, and not related to circuses or anything, like just to have fun and party. And so I liked the way the connection with the two characters with the bunting, and then all the way through, and at presentations I've sewn bunting. Yeah, it's a fun thing.
Cool. Another question, Debbie, from Elisa is, have you got another book in the pipeline?
I do, but not just, I'm just playing with it at the moment. So I've got some ideas that I've been working on, and I'm actually writing a middle grade at the moment.
Fantastic. Wenda, I just have a couple of questions for you. One here is, sorry, what type of illustration style is Dig? Is it digital?
I think it is, yes, because when they made changes, they made them very quickly. So I think so. I wouldn't know what time. I know that Andrea is a German illustrator, and she's got a very distinct style. Yeah.
Perfect. There have been some other comments, but people will, just to save time, I'm just asking the question so we can all read the comments as we go through as well. Dave, I've got a question for you from Eleni. Any plans to do any more young adult stuff? I really enjoyed Summer of Kicks.
Oh, you mean the Summer of Kicks?
Yes.
I would love to. I would love to. I think it's the story of every writer's life where you're thinking, as soon as I get through this stuff, then I'll do the project that I really want to do. So yeah, I have one or two really good solid ideas for a YA novel, and I would love to do that. That's one of my few super happy spaces. So hopefully soon.
Fantastic. Another two questions as well. When will the workplace whatever that big word was, book be out?
Oh, that is coming out in the French spring, which I think is no, the French is spring, autumn, spring. Like March, April. So it's coming out, it's going to come out in France first of all, but we think it may be happening with text a little bit later on.
Great.
So yeah, it's pretty big and pretty fantastic.
And
we're excited. We're so excited.
Cool. And do we have a publication date for the music non-fiction?
No, not yet. But that, above all the other things, that is my super excited space. I'm so excited. Lots of drawing, lots of music.
Fantastic. The one comment we did have is just as well, Dave, that we aren't allowed to travel, as you might be overrun by people coming to ask if we can come and stay. So lucky we can't travel.
There's plenty of room. It's a nice village. It's all right.
Cool. Okay, so we do have our lucky draw. I'll get Jenny to pop up again, and this time we have Time for Adventure Daddy by Dave Hackett. Hackett, published and donated by UQP. Eva's Imagination by Wendy Surety, donated by Wendy and published by New Frontier. And If You Meet an Elephant by Debbie Smith. So all three of those books will be going to the lucky winner. So Jenny, I'll let you do the magic lucky winner.
First one is Kylie Meyer, Forest Lake, Brisbane. Is Kylie online? Kylie, are you there? Okay, I'm drawing for the second book. I'll give Kylie time to respond. The second book was...
second book was Eva's Imagination by Wendy Surety.
That was you, Kelly.
Oh, was it?
No, you just won it.
No, put it back in. It's all right. It's okay.
All right, draw again.
Yep.
Isn't that funny? Verity Croker, I know she's online. So that was Eva's Imagination, did you say?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Okay, Eva. Yes.
And Verity said yes, she's there.
And the third book was The Elephant Book.
Yes.
Denise Beanland from Mitcham, Victoria. Are you there, Denise? should be able to look in the list of people here, actually, because you can see them. No, Denise is not there. Okay, draw again.
Redraw.
Yeah, and who was the other one?
I don't know.
EFG.
Oh, Denise's iPad says thank you, everyone.
Oh, was it?
Denise's iPad says thank you.
Okay, so that was if you meet
an elephant. So what about Time for Daddy? Who was that first person we pulled out?
Well, the first person we pulled out was Kylie Meyer.
Okay, so if Kylie Meyer does not respond in the next few things, then we'll redraw maybe in the next round.
Redrawn, and it's Vicky Young from Canberra.
Vicky Young from Canberra instead.
Vicky there? She was one of the last people who booked today, right at the last minute. I think she's disappeared. Vicky Young? Oh, you got to stay in here. You got to be online to win it. All right, drawing again.
She may have just ducked out for cheese and Vicky. Sorry? Margaret Gibbs. I know Margaret's in here.
Oh, good.
So,
yep, Marg said yes. She says thanks.
Okay.
And whilst we're just here, I'm going to pop up the details for the little book nook as well with the lovely Kay Nixon, and you can by all means pop into it's in the chat room there, and that you can purchase those books as well.
I've got them. Oh, what was the last one? Margaret Gibbs. Wasn't Denise Beanland If You Meet an Elephant?
Yes.
Yes, but Margaret Gibbs was our redraw for the first one that didn't get picked up.
Which is Dave Hackett. Okay, Time to Daddy.
Cool.
So time for adventure.
So time to move on to our third round. Jenny, how are we going?
Just getting there.
So our third round of authors, Trent, Elisa, Pamela and Michelle, if they could turn on their screens, and whilst Jenny just pops our and I'll ask Carolyn and everyone from the previous group to turn off, but this time we've got our 4 authors for our last grouping. And first up we have Trent Jamison, and he is from Brisbane. Trent is a multi-award-winning novelist and short story writer. He is a teacher, bookseller and writer of science fiction and fantasy, including Deathwork series, the Nightbound Land Duology, Day Boy, and most recently the picture book, The Giant and the Sea, illustrated by, I'm going to say this wrong, Rovina Kay. I personally have read this book to our year 3s, and they were absolutely transfixed by the story. He's also won multiple awards for his short stories and lives in Brisbane. Tonight, Trent will be talking about The Giant and the Sea, published by Hackett. We also have Elisa Darlingson, and Elisa is also a local Sunshine Coast author who's written over 50 books for children and has won or been shortlisted for also numerous awards. Elisa is another firm favourite at Voices on the Coast, and 2020 is the year of the llama for Elisa as she shares her new children's series, League of Llamas, aka LOL, published by Penguin Random House, which features a team of hilarious llama secret agents embarking on dangerous missions to save their country, the Llama Republic. Tonight, Elisa will share her llama adventures. We also have Pamela Rushby from Brisbane, and Pamela is joining us from Brisbane and is the author of over 200 books for children and young adults, as well as children's TV scripts, documentaries, short stories, and freelance journalism. Pam has been an advertising copywriter, preschool teacher, and producer of educational television, audio, and multimedia. She has won several literary awards, and Pam believes the strangest, most riveting, heartbreaking, laugh-out-loud stories aren't fiction, they're real. They come from history. Pamela will be speaking about her most recent book, The Mummy Smugglers of Crumbling Castle, published by Walker Books in July 2020. And I'm hoping that we have Michelle Carter-Roosman, who is also joining us from Toronto, Canada. She is, so with the wonders of technology, we hope that she's joining from Toronto. She did grow up in Melbourne and also lived in Indonesia and Canada. Her 2019 middle grade novel Girl of the Southern Sea will be published in Australia by UQP in 2021, but her previous novel, The Theory of Hummingbirds, is a finalist for a number of literary awards and was published in June 2020 by UQP. Michelle lives in Toronto, Canada, and is looking forward to soon spending more time in Australia. Tonight, Michelle will be talking to us about The Theory of Hummingbirds. So if we can just ask those authors to all pop on. And first up, we have Trent Jamison.
Okay, I guess it's time to start.
It is. Thanks, Trent.
Thank you all for having me. The world of children's books is still a mystery to me, because I really started out as a writer for adults, and my first book, which was The Business of Death, this is my messy study too, was about, well, a guy that works for death, and it's very, very adult, and it was kind of my go at work choices. And then I wrote a steampunk series called The Nightbound Land. And then I wrote a book called Day Boy, which was, I guess, kind of YA. And yeah, that was the book where I feel like I was heading a little bit towards younger readers. And I'd been working on the follow-up to that book, which is a book called The Stone Road, which is actually coming out next year. But I was having so much trouble with the follow-up with this. I got a grant to write it, and it just wasn't working. And I don't know if you can see my study, it's messy. I'm a messy writer. I'm not a very logical thinker. I tend to write things in a very unstructured way and then put them together, kind of write scenes and then see where they fit. And it takes me a very, very long time to work out where a story is going. And with The Stone Road, I'd had some time off work because I had this grant. I work in a bookstore, normally an avid reader in West End. And I was really terribly struggling. And the one thing that I did have was, I had this sentence that was going through my head. And I decided I'd sit down and have a go at working out where that sentence was. And the sentence was, there was a giant who stood on the shore of the sea. And I just wanted to know what happened to that giant, why that giant was there, what they were standing there doing. And I guess, like most writers, you know, you're always trying to uncover something. And for me, I tend to start off with an image or a sentence or a line, and then rather than a concept or an idea. And I didn't realize that what I was writing, which is The Giant in the Sea, was a children's book. I had no idea initially when I started it. I had no idea where it was going. But the one thing that it did do, that sometimes happens to me with short fiction, is that I actually sat down and wrote it in one sitting. And it was a story that flowed. My novel was all over the place. That wasn't going anywhere. I was having a lot of trouble piecing it together. But this story just flowed from me. And when I finished writing it, I thought, well, I'm actually writing about climate change. And I played around with it a little bit and then sent it to my agent. Kind of, I'd been annoying her with this, telling her that I wanted to write children's books, and I'd sent her some really not so great ones, but I felt like this one was a little bit different. And it found a home at Lothian, and it kind of worked from there. For me, writing about climate change isn't a surprise. The first short story I ever published back in 1995, which is 94 actually, a very long time ago, was a story called Threnody, and it was actually illustrated by Sean Tarn. So I did have a little bit, and it was about climate change, and it was about a changed Alstonville in northern New South Wales, where I kind of grew up. And so I had that. Climate change has always been something that's interested me, and something that I thought would eventually become irrelevant, because, you know, we definitely sorted out. So with this book, which was upside down, was me having another go at exploring that. And when I wrote it back in 2017, I actually even thought, well, this is going to be, we're actually going to have maybe a major government shift, a major change in perception about climate change. And hopefully this book will be irrelevant. And then in between then, my daughter was born, and suddenly climate change became even more personal to me, and writing a story about it that put into context our reaction to climate change was very important. So what is the story about? It is about a giant who stands on the shore of the sea, looking out across the sea. And there's a girl that plays by that shore, a very brave girl, and she plays and sings to the giant. And the giant never speaks, she never does anything but stare out to sea. But one day the giant turns to the girl and says, "The sea is rising." And she tells the girl that she needs to turn off a machine that is causing the sea to rise. But it is a machine that the nearby city uses to create great prosperity. So obviously the reaction to being told to turn that off isn't quite quite positive. So it's looking at that and looking at what people will do when they're faced with somebody telling them a not so positive message or a message of warning, and the fear that's involved around that. So it makes it sound like a very dark story, but it's not quite. It's quite hopeful as well. It's illustrated by Ravina Kai. Her illustrations are amazing.
Trent, I'm going to have to stop you. It's beautiful. Would you like to quickly show one of the illustrations?
Oh, I will. I'll show my favourite. It does possibly spoil it a little bit, but actually no, I'll go with this one. It's just absolutely stunning artwork. And there I was thinking that I had nothing to say and that I'd stop at about 2 minutes. So
5 minutes whips by very fast, believe me. And like I said, when I read that book to my year threes, they were absolutely stunned, and the messages are just phenomenal in your book. So congratulations, Trent. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. Thank you. Now, sorry, who have I got next? Oh, I've lost my list, sorry. Elisa, sorry about that. Would you like to pop on and start? Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Kelly, and thanks, Jenny, for organising this wonderful evening. I'm actually going to share my screen so people have got a nice little visual behind me. Kelly, can you just confirm that you can see my PowerPoint presentation, Everybody Loves Llamas?
Yes, I can. It's not on. Yes, that's it. That's better. Thank you.
Probably a slight lag. I'm coming to you from the Sunshine Coast, which is considered regional Queensland. So I'm Elisa Darlingson. I am an author. I've written about 50 books in the last 10 years. So I've been kept very, very busy with my writing. I absolutely love writing, and I love writing for children. I think it's really fun. And they are a great indicator of whether you're writing well or not, especially if you read to them, especially if you visit lots of schools, and you can get great feedback straight away on your stories and how they're going. So I write picture books, chapter books, novels and series, and I have won writing awards and been shortlisted for them as well. So I tend to write about animals a lot. I grew up living in the country, and I always had animals around me, not just my brothers and sisters who could get pretty wild, but the animals we had on our farm and in the bush. So I am really, really inspired by animals. I do like writing environmental stories, but I will anthropomorphize animals as well. So some of my picture books are up on the screen there. And some of my books for older children are there as well. I do write stories besides just animal stories. I write fantasy adventure stories. I write sports stories. And I'm quite well known for the Unicorn Riders series, which is an 8-book fantasy adventure series. My latest series, published by Penguin Random House, is the League of Llamas. So there are 4 books in this series. We had 2 released in March and 2 just released in July. And one of my little readers told me that he got a million laughs out of these books. So that really filled me with joy. It's part of the reason that I wrote these stories. I think now more than ever, we need to have kids laughing and escaping into books. It's really, really important. And I really wanted children to laugh when they read these books. League of Llamas, they are secret agents, and League of Llamas is also LOL, which stands for Laugh Out Loud. So I guess that kind of layering goes through the whole series. The main character in the books is Philippe Lamar. He's Agent 0011. You'll notice that all of the characters, being llamas, they have 2 L's in their names, first name and last name. 0011, the 2 1s kind of stand for 2 L's there as well. And Philippe Lamar is kind of like a clumsy James Bond, okay? He's a bit of a mix of James Bond and Maxwell Smart, I guess you could say. And he's very cool and debonair. He's got this amazing luxuriant fringe. But he's a little bit clumsy and quite forgetful. So that brings a lot of comedy into the stories as well. And you get that kind of slapstick and hyperbole and exaggerated humour in the stories. Now, Philippe's best friend and loyal sidekick is Lloyd Laminator. He's reliable, he's as cool as a cucumber, but he is completely ruled by his stomach. His favourite thing to eat is donuts, okay? So he will often be sidetracked by his food and his desire to eat food. Eloise Lamoreski, she's Agent 0077. She's dangerous, she's confident, she's daring and courageous. They're her pros, they're her good points, her strengths. But her weakness is she's also very dangerous, and she will just race into a room. She'll be doing fly kicks and, you know, cartwheels and all sorts of martial arts moves, when perhaps she should just slow down a little bit and be a bit more careful with what she's doing. The head of the League of Llamas is Mama Llama, okay? She is a force to be reckoned with. And in an effort to create more humour for my young readers, I've created a very horrible villain. He is a badger, he's odious, he's a troublemaker, he's a liar, he's very vain, and he's called General Bottom Burp. And of course, he does do lots of bottom burping. So I often get asked, what is the inspiration behind my stories? I did touch on the animal side of things, and yes, animals are huge in my stories, but I've got 4 children. I know it's terrible. If you hear sound like elephants stomping at the moment, that's just my teenagers running through the house. I have a daughter who's very crazy, and she is just gorgeous. I build her into my stories. She's my beta reader, by the way. And I have 3 sons. They're absolutely amazing kids, amazing boys. They keep me very busy and occasionally get eaten by crocodiles. And they form a brilliant basis for stories as well. Plus, of course, all the animals that I love. Is that my time, Kelly?
That is your time. And gosh, on perfect time as always, Elisa, and a fantastic presentation. I think you're going to get top 10 out of 10 out of that for that one. Well done. You've done this before with Romancing the Stars, how quickly you have to speak. So well done on that.
Sorry, I was probably speaking really quickly. I hope there wasn't too much of a lag.
No, it was all good and beautiful, you know, images to have a look at as well. So thank you, Elisa. That's perfect.
Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen now and I'll put myself on mute. Thank you.
Thanks, Elisa. And now it's time for Pamela. Pamela, are you there? Whoops, there's Pam. Pam, you're still muted at this stage.
How's that?
Perfect, thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, I'm right to go. Okay. Yep. Thank you, Kelly. Hello, everyone. This is my latest book, The Mummy Smugglers of Crumbling Castle. It's a middle grade historical fantasy set in England and Egypt in 1873 and beautifully illustrated by Nellie Mae Pierce. It's a thrilling tale of an orphaned heroine, a mysterious, mist-shrouded castle in the fens, mummy unwrapping parties, a family of housekeeping cats, and a 1,000-mile journey up the Nile in search, totally illegally, of ancient Egyptian mummies. So here's the story. When her guardian is unfortunately eaten by a crocodile, 12-year-old Hattie Lambton is sent to live with hitherto unknown relatives, her great-uncle and great-aunt in their half-ruined castle in the mist-shrouded fens. Now there she finds her great-aunt supports the family and tries to keep the crumbling castle in repair, by conducting mummy unwrapping parties, aided by 2 assistants, sinister and highly suspect brother and sister Raven. But soon a problem arises. The Egyptian government has made it illegal to export mummies from Egypt. So there are no more mummies for unwrapping parties, and therefore no income. So what does the family do? They decide to undertake a 1,000-mile journey up the Nile in search of a new supply of mummies and to export them secretly and illegally from Egypt, which they do. But once in Egypt, Hattie starts to develop doubts about whether it is really right to destroy the bodies of ancient Egyptians. But there's no way that the Ravens are going to allow the unwrappings to be discontinued because they have a nice little racket set up and they've been swindling her great aunt for years. They threaten Hattie and her great uncle, and Hattie knows they're serious, dead serious. On their return to England, Hattie soon finds herself on the run, on a desperate dash to a famous London museum with a very special, heavily disguised mummy case in her arms. She's determined to save the souls of ancient Egyptians from wandering in darkness forever, and the villainous Ravens are hot on her trail. So there's a lot of fun and fantasy, but the book is based on totally real, if rather bizarre, facts. There really were mummy unwrapping parties. They were highly fashionable tea parties where, for the entertainment of guests, an ancient Egyptian mummy would be unwrapped. People really did go on leisurely journeys up the Nile. They travelled on luxurious houseboats called dahabiyas, and they took 3 to 4 months visiting pyramids and temples and tombs along the way. And people really did smuggle artefacts and mummies out of Egypt. I used the diaries of 2 genuine lady adventurers on the Nile, Marianne Brocklehurst and Amelia Edwards, for my research. So we've got adventurers on the Nile, mummy smuggling, mummy unwrapping parties. When you've got this kind of information, what do you do with it? Well, you write a book, of course. So the historical details are all accurate and the facts fit the curriculum. There is heaps of information on the history of ancient Egypt, Egyptian art, burial practices, the decorations of tombs and temples, Egyptian gods and goddesses. So the book is especially suitable for use with students when they study an ancient civilization. And there's lots of adventure and action because I couldn't resist throwing in the ruined castle, the mummy unwrapping parties, housekeeping kittens who polish floors and bake muffins, 2 very unscrupulous villains, and all of this and a feisty young heroine. And here it is, and it's out now, The Mummy Smugglers of Crumbling Castle.
Fabulous. Thank you, Pam. And you've got 8 seconds to go, but that's wonderful. You've done so well. That's great. I'm going to stop the ding-donging before it starts. That's perfect. Thank you, Pam. And now we have Michelle, and I can see Michelle there. So she's obviously made it in from Canada, and I'll let you start. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you. So I'm lucky last, and thank you to Jenny and Kelly as well. And I'm coming to you from Toronto in Canada, where the sun has just come up, and I don't drink coffee, and I had some espresso, so I don't know what's going to happen. But so I'll jump in. I'm going to talk about first my book, The Theory of Hummingbirds. And this book actually originally came out in North America in 2017, but I'm thrilled that UQP have published it for Australian readers, and that came out in June. So the book is about a girl called Alba, and she was born with a club foot, like I was. but she is determined still. She really wants to run in the school cross-country race. But even though her best friend Levi doesn't think she can do it, and he's very preoccupied with science theories and physics. So it's really a story about friendship and self-acceptance, and lots of hummingbird facts as well. There's lots of hummingbird facts. Alba finds a lot of her challenges. She can look at her challenges differently with a lot of hummingbird facts. And also there's a parable in the book about the fire and the hummingbird, which also help her look at her challenges differently. The second book I'll tell you about is called Girl of the Southern Sea. Now this book, this is the North American version, which came out in 2019, but UQP are going to be publishing this story in February next year. Now this one's set in my father's homeland of Indonesia. It's about a girl called Nia, and she grows up in the slums of Jakarta. And she really wants, all she really wants to do is be able to continue her education and go to high school. She wants to become a writer, but sadly her family can't afford it. And she has to spend all her time instead looking after her little brother and running the family's fried banana cart. So Nia really draws strength from a mythical character called the Queen of the Southern Sea, Dewi Kadita. And so she writes stories for her little brother based on this character. And this is really a story, you know, of self-empowerment. It's also an opportunity to give, well, North American children, but now, you know, Australian children, a look in what it might be like for girls like Nia, who don't have the same opportunities that we take for granted, you know, free education, free healthcare, you know, for so many girls around the world. They don't have these, and children around the world, they don't have these same rights. And I'm going to show you, actually, UQP have given me permission to show you what the Australian cover will look like. So I'm going to try and share my screen, see how I go, and show you. Oh, I'm disabled. I don't know if Jenny, you can allow me to share my screen so I can show the cover of Girl of the Southern Sea in Australia, but I'll keep rambling on until that happens. Let me try again. No, okay. There we go. Here we go. All right. So this is the beautiful cover that will be the Australian paperback that's going to be out in February. So you guys are seeing it first. Okay, I'll stop the share because I wanted to, if I've still got time, I wanted to mention one more book, which is, this book, Music for Tigers, came out internationally in April this year. And it's set in Tasmania, where my mum is from. And if you can see the illustration, you can sort of see what tiger they're referring to. So there are thylacines in this book. And it's a story about a girl, a Canadian girl who is shipped off to her mother's bush camp in Tasmania, where she finds out that her family have been stewards of a secret sanctuary for endangered and extinct marsupials. And Louisa is a violinist, and she comes to understand that her music can help lure some of these animals to safety. There's a bit of a mystery, so I'm not going to give too much away, but this one is available in Australia right now in hardcover only, and it will be coming out in paperback next year. And I wanted to mention, so Theory of Hummingbirds is really great for grade 3 and 4, I would say. Girl of the Southern Sea is a little bit older readers, I'd say grade 5 and up. And Music for Tigers, that's a more broad range, I would say grade 3 to grade 6. And I think
Michelle,
I'm done.
yep, you're over and done with. I'm sorry to say.
Okay, no, I'm done.
It's been absolutely awesome. So, but thank you to everybody. Wow, we're at the end of this session. So there are a couple of quick questions, and actually the author, because we are running over time, some of the authors have answered those questions in the chat, but just a very quick one for Pam. How much time do you spend researching? And sorry, did you research before or after writing the story?
I did some research before, but I have visited Egypt a couple of times and I've written about it before, so I didn't have to do an awful lot of research.
Fantastic. And another question for you also, Pam, was wondering what age group do you think the book fits for?
Middle grade, 9 to about 12.
Great, fabulous. Lots of fantastic comments, I might add, for all of those, the authors through the thing. Michelle, just quickly for you, question for you. I'm probably half copied this. Albert is really frustrated with how her mum doesn't understand how she feels at times. Was this an important part of the book for her?
Yeah, I think, Alba is frustrated because she wants to do something, even though it's not really possible. And, I think a lot of kids, we have our, kids dream big. And I think that's a big part of Alba's character. But there also needed to be characters in the story that, tried to tether her a little bit. And like most mums, we're always telling our kids what they can't do. So, and this was Alba's mum tried to keep her, feet on the ground, literally. But so I think I tried to keep that as realistic as possible.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michelle. I'm just quickly reading a comment there. So, and we've come to our last lucky book prize, and this time we have, The Theory of Hummingbirds by Michelle Carter-Roosman, published and donated by UQP. So, Jenny, are you quickly whipping your fingers in there and grabbing one of those?
Online, hey?
Yep.
Justine Cooper from Auchenflower. Are you online still? Are you here, Justine? Let's see if I can see you. I can see Justine Lawson. But no, Justine. Is that you, Justine Cooper, that says Justine? Type something in the chat box if it's you. Justine Cooper, last chance.
Oh yes, Justine has just whipped in saying awesome.
Right, okay.
In by the skin of your teeth, Justine.
Okay.
Great, fantastic. So I'm just going to do a very fast wrap up because I know we always do go very close to time on these ones, and it's been an awesome evening, a wonderful, wonderful time. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to our stars from all over Australia and also the world, and our behind the scenes team sorting out the Zoom functions with Yvonne and Jenny. And to Jenny Stubbs once again for being the mastermind, the amazing way that she can gather these fantastic people together. Thank you also to Kay Nixon at the Little Book Nook, and you'll see on your screen some beautiful, beautiful photos there. Little Book Nook is just in Palmwoods on the Sunshine Coast, and there's Kay in the middle of the books there. So it's a 10% discount, and she will be posting those books out to you. Don't forget to join Booklinks as a member to keep you up to date with what's happening in all of the Kids Lit world. You can follow them on Facebook. Also, there's a lot of events coming up. Just check the bookings details. But this Sunday, 23rd of August, there are still some spaces available for the Young Writers Workshop with Brian Faulkner from 11 a.m. and the Young Illustrators Workshop with Lucia from 1 p.m. as well. On Saturday, 5th of September, Sunshine Coast author Danny Parker will be running an online workshop for the Right Links group from 12:30 onwards. Saturday, 17th of October, Booklinks have got their AGM as well with a guest speaker, Pauline McLeod, looking at the publishing industry and how it's managed the COVID situation and what is meant for children's book sales globally and locally. And she will discuss the book industry's best book sellers at the moment. Can I also throw in a plug there for Voices on the Coast if you wanted to join up with our website or our newsletter as well. And we're just going to mention the Australia Reads. Is running from the 1st to the 12th of November. Lots of big plans. Jenny's got all sorts of things in the wings there. And kick off from the 1st of November with the announcement of the winner of the Young Writers Short Story Competition run by Storylinks and the readings of the best stories submitted. So if you know any young writers, get them in now to encourage them to enter. And Storylinks provides reviews, interviews and resources and manages the writing competitions. Tonight, you are the first people to hear about the new Book Links Award for Children's Historical Fiction. This will be given every 2 years, with the first to be awarded in 2021 for books published between 2019 and 2020. More information will come about that. So, a big breath there. After all of that, thank you so much to everybody. And if you want to, we said if you want to, you can turn on your microphones, turn on your videos, and why don't we give our authors and stars a round of applause, and have a wonderful night.